this video, we're going to go through how to use the normal distribution to find probabilities. So we're going to be using primarily the curve, the actual graph of the normal distribution to do this. And as you can see, this is the bell-shaped curve where we have shaded the area to the left of this value x, and that represents the probability that this event is going to be less than whatever little x represents, like let's say it's 7. So this is how we will use the normal curve to help us find probabilities. Now, to actually find these probabilities, you'll either use a table, a computer, or a calculator. We're going to use tables. And then if you take the next class, we will use the computer also to do some of those calculations. If you want to find the area to the right, we're going to actually have to take the complement. That's what this statement down here says. So we would do 1 minus the area to the left. So the table that we're going to be working from is on your formula sheet. So you may want to pause the video, grab that, and use that. I just want to make a note and remind you that if it says bigger than or less than or bigger than or equal to, less than or equal to, we don't distinguish when it says equal to or not. It's all the same. So that makes absolutely no difference or bearing on how we find the areas. Okay, so let's go ahead and try a problem. And we're going to use the formula sheet to do this. So let's say I want to find the probability that z is less than 1.23. So z is referring to a z-score, which we talked about in a previous video. And you might recall that the z-score is how far a data value is away from the mean in terms of standard deviation. So when we have a z equaling 1.23, that's about a little over 1 standard deviation away from the mean. I'll just put it right about here. And they want us to be finding all the probability that that value would be less than this amount, 1.23. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look that up off the table. So let me go ahead and pull that up and let's talk about it. So this table on the formula sheet, there's 2 parts. There's positive values and negative values. That's up here. Okay. You'll notice that from the picture, all of these values are going to be less than or equal to the number, or in other words, on the left. And the way you use the table is you see the values down here on this column. Let me go and grab my highlighter. So these values here, okay, those represent the first 2 numbers of the z-score. And then these values here represent the second, the second digit of the decimal. So here, I'm going to bounce back and forth between the 2 pages. So we want to find a z-score of 1.23. All right, so on our table then, we're going to go to 1.2 here on this left column. I'm going to go ahead and erase these highlighting marks so that we can keep track. So here's 1.2. And then in order to get the 1.23, we have to go to the column where the 3 is in the hundredths place. And the value that we're going to use is right here, 0.89065. And that is the answer to this probability, 0.89065. So that is the probability for that specific z-score. And we'll be calculating the z-scores in the next part. But for right now, we're just going to practice using the table. Okay, so let's try a negative value here. I want you to draw pictures for these because it'll help us, first of all, with the understanding. Plus, it'll allow me to see if you make a mistake, where the mistake is, so that I know that if you made that mistake, maybe I can judge whether or not you actually knew the process. Okay, so negative 2.1. Negatives mean that it's actually on the left side of the mean. It's smaller than the mean. So this would be a little over 2 standard deviations away. And it's still less than. So we're still shading to the left here, which means I need to look this up off the table. So negative 2.1 on this table then is, okay, let me erase these. negative 2.1. I'm going to come up here to the negative ones. All right, and here I'm going to zoom out a little just so I can see the top of the table. Okay, negative 2.1, that is right here. And because it didn't have a number in the hundredths place, that would be negative 2.10. So that is 0.01786. So this is 0.01786. So what that represents is about a 1.8% chance that this event is going to happen, that we're going to get a data value that's a little over 2 standard deviations below the mean. It has a less than 2% chance of occurring. Okay, so let's try the other direction. So for this one, we are looking at 1.68 above the mean again, about 1.5 standard deviations, 1.68. Okay. And then it's shading to the right this time because it's supposed to be bigger than that value. So we're going to look up 1.68 off the table. And let's go down to the positives here, 1.68. Okay. So here's the 1.6. And then the 8 is right there. So that would be this value, 0.95352. So 0.95352. Now, that's technically not the answer. What they just gave me, that number is actually shaded to the left. So I actually need to subtract this from 1 in order to find this half, the right half of this. So let's do that real quick. 1 minus 0.95352. And that's getting me 0.04648. All right. Okay, so let's try part D here. I like kind of squeezed myself here into the corner. That's fine. Okay, so we have two z-scores this time. It's trapped between two z-scores. So negative 1.2, that's like below the mean, a little over 1 standard deviation. And then 0.65, that's even closer, but that's above the mean. Here, I might even make that just a little closer, just so that it represents, what that looks like. Should be a little over half a standard deviation. Okay, there we go. So 0.65, just being picky. All right, so we're going to find the area between these two values. That is what this says. It's the probabilities between these two values. So what we're going to do is we're going to look up both values off the table. And then because we want between them, we're going to subtract it. All right, so back to the table. Let's give this a try. So the first value, let me go ahead and pull that up on a different screen so I can keep track. We are being asked to find, I'm going to start with the larger number just because that'll be easier for me for the subtracting. So the negative 1.2, let's do that first. Negative 1.2, here, let me go and erase that and that. Okay, so negative 1.2 is right there. Oops, a little big. Got a little enthusiastic there. There we go. And since there's no number in the second spot, we're at the 0. So that's going to be 0.11507. The second number is 0.65. 0.65. So going to the positives now. So 0.6 and then 5 right there. That is 0.74215. All right, so now I went ahead and put that into my calculator, but let's write that down first. So this is going to be 0.74215 minus 0.11507. And when I subtract, I get 0.62708. Oops, there's the decimal. And that's how we would use the table to find these values. So what we need to do that is the z-score. And that will then be the first step we will do on these problems in order to find the probabilities.